everybody, and welcome to tonight's live stream with me and you. And no, that's it. That's it. It's just the one of me and the 20 or so of you, and that'll slowly count up throughout the evening. I'm very excited to have you here. I had a great day today, and I hope that you did as well. And it's good to see you here. So if this is your first stream, such as the Masked Bandit is saying it is there, well, welcome, and bring your questions. Just remember to preface your question with the word question in caps lock, and then at least I'll be able to see it. And if I miss it, ask it again. There's no limit on the streaming, restreaming type of thing here. So Nick the Knife says, well, let's jump into it. Oh dear. Adult question. I don't know if there's any adults here, Nick, but I've covered sex in a few videos, and the question of blood, violence, and gore is kind of given in a combative system. But how do you feel about the introduction of alcohol and narcotics, both in and out of game? Remember, I live in Canada where cannabis is legal. So it's a very touchy subject, and I will never promote the use of either alcohol or narcotics outside of the game. Personally, it's not for me, and I've seen the effects on others, and I don't think it's very good. That's not to say that I don't think you should drink alcohol every now and again. Each to their own, and always hopefully in moderation, and never to the point that one becomes abusive or violent towards others. Within the game itself, however, it's one of those limits that you have to ask your players whether they're comfortable with or not. So, for example, in the one-on-one game that I run on Wednesday evenings, I asked Brian, the player, I said, okay, well, what level do you want to pitch this at? What are the boundaries in terms of exactly that question? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, basically. And his answer was he'd like it to be PG-13. So if it appears in, say, a Disney movie, it should be okay. And to that point, we look at Pirates of the Caribbean, which is a Disney movie and was their first PG-13 release ever. And as a result, you go, well, there was lots of rum drinking in there. The alcoholism was definitely played upon as a humorous twist. The rum joke was played aplenty. There was certainly plenty of gore and that sort of stuff, absolutely. There was the sexual tension that we had, but it wasn't ever taken too far. And I don't ever advocate that it is taken further than you lean in for a kiss and the camera pans away into the moonlit sky type of stuff. So there is certainly that. With regards to narcotics, well, oftentimes if they are used in ways in which one is wanting to express a point or an opinion, for sure. And hallucinogenics and the like have been used by shamans and witch doctors for centuries across the globe. So from a historical perspective, it is not necessarily an untouchable. Having said that, if I was ever playing with a group of individuals under the age of 16, I would certainly make sure that it was very lightly touched upon or explained that these were very specific circumstances that they were being used under. It is difficult, it is tricky, and personally, I never pitch my games for anyone under the age of 16 anyway. It's just not an area that I'm comfortable with. I wouldn't know how, if I had children of my own, which I thankfully never will have, I think they would be raised in a very, very strange kind of way. But anyway, that's my thoughts on that one very roughly. So there we are. Witcher 2417 says, can you tell me a little bit more about the Masterclass? Well, that was a great seed. I didn't ask you to ask that question, Watcher 2417. What do you mean by Masterclass? I'm going to talk about the Masterclass in a little bit. There are a lot of people who I think would like to hear about that. But yes, we will definitely come back to that question later on in the show. There is a Masterclass that will be running at the end of the month called Circle of World Builders Masterclass 2020. And I'll talk more about that as we get into it. But we're answering questions for now. Let's focus on questions about role-playing specifically. And so there we are. Ryan the Wolf says, what do you think of the revised version of the psionic classes from Unearthed Arcana? I have certainly seen a lot of hype about the psionics classes from Unearthed Arcana. What do I think about it? I haven't read it. I will be absolutely honest with you. I haven't looked into it. And there are a few reasons for that. I am part of the old guard who remember when they tried to introduce Psionics in 2nd edition, and they released the Psionics Handbook, which was supposedly a gateway to let Psionics in, and I've had Psionicists of a kind in my own games where they've used custom homemade rules and things like that. For me, Psionics is just another form of magic, and provided that it is governed by the same principles and balanced in the same way, I think it's awesome. I do think, however, that there are certain issues that come into play with Psionics. Now, when you look at something like Magic in 5th edition, there are lots of DCs, and they're not very high either, usually, anyway, for an ordinary character to avoid magic being thrown at them or succumbing to it. Psionics sometimes seems to twist that and go above and beyond, requiring extra bits and bobs, and then everyone's being attacked by psionic monsters and things. So I think it's always about balance. And if you are going to introduce a psionic creature, then the question is, well, if they're using the magic spells of a wizard, the wizard uses incantations and cantrips. You know, they use their spell book and all those kinds of wonderful things and components. I never use components in my 5th edition games. I don't care if the wizard has them or not. For me, that was a bit of flavor that was added in to limit the amount of spells a mage could cast back in the day. I don't think they're relevant whatsoever anymore these days. So really, psionics for me is just a different form of expression of magic. In terms of balance and that sort of thing, that I hope they would do. Laura Bones, I hope you're happy. And to those of you that are getting some goblins, there was some questioning as to what were the goblins all about. Well, they're a monthly thing, provided that I remember. But they are a monthly thing, and they are a riddle. But that's all I'm going to say for now. There we go. There we go. Now, let's see. Woody Wobbles says, what game rules do you GM currently? Currently, I GM the game rules that I've written myself called the Tri system and the Tri-Fi system, which is the science fiction version of the Tri system, which is a fantasy version with magic in it. It's very rough. It's very raw. I used it for the live streams of the shows The Wizards of Konbari, which we played through over a course of 10 sessions, actually. It was live for an hour every day. Seems surreal, actually, thinking back to those heady days of playing every day for an hour or so. But yes, I use a Tri system. It is available on my Discord channel. Shut up. Just put it in chat like a normal human being. Discord.gg/. Great GM, you can find it there on the Wizards of Konbari, actually. It's the Tri system. Have a look at it, see what you think. You're more than welcome to use it. It's free to use. Still very rough, like I said, and there were refinements made and are continuously being made. So that's what I currently use. My default, if I have to do something, like today, for example, for Kobold Con, that wonderful online virtual convention, I was running a 5th edition game, although my knowledge of 5th edition is not as complete as I would like it to be, or as many people would like it to be, I think. But I do like 5th edition, I will admit. I'm a Dungeons and Dragons fan, so there we are. But yes, what do you currently use? I'm always interested to see. I've been exposed in the last month, as a matter of fact, to Savage Worlds, which was interesting, or is interesting, I should say. Very simple kind of system. I'm not sure if it's robust, though. I want to see more as we play. At the moment, there's a game mechanic which is very irritating, which I don't particularly like. But anyway, we'll see what that's like. I've been playing Through the Breach with Michael Kessevan on the Mercs of Mischief Twitch channel, and that's the Through the Breach system, which uses a deck of cards, which initially I didn't like. I'm like, well, why not just use dice? Why use cards? So the cards were, I must admit, you kind of get into it. And I think I actually prefer using these kinds of systems when I'm not the GM, when I'm just the player, and it's not as disruptive as I thought it was going to be. So there you are. Desmaner says, how do you feel about making alignment important part of the campaign? I make it an important part of the campaign when I have new players. When I have players who don't necessarily know what the social contract is, and they don't necessarily know about role playing. They might sort of go, well, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that, maybe my characters are going to kill everybody that they find because there's no consequences. So I think bringing alignment in for new players is good as a guiding line. But once you've played 5 or 6 sessions or so, you kind of know that everyone devolves, unless they consciously trying not to, into a fairly cutthroat, neutral, evil kind of character. Let's be ultimately honest. I mean, we might say, oh, no, this, that. Why is Watcher2417 asking me questions in German? Wenn sich 2,000 Personen... You're asking me, what am I going to do when we reach 2,000 people for this convention? So, Watcher's test of my understanding of German, if I'm reading this correctly, is what will I do when we reach 2,000 people signing up for the Masterclass? Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Well, I'll think about it. I will think about it. Now, dye my hair blue. I went blue once, long ago. But what I hope Kaora remembers or is aware of this, when you dye your hair a different colour, usually when you're going lighter, and blue is considered lighter, anyway, for me, you have to bleach your hair first, which means you have to use peroxide. So you can't do it to this. I did it once, and I nearly killed myself because the peroxide goes straight up your nose because you have to breathe as a human being. So anyway, it should be fun. It should be fun, but we'll see. We'll see. I see lots of people getting the free goblin. I didn't understand it. Twitch lied to me. They're like, oh, people usually get enough points to unlock this after an hour of watching a stream. I'm like, yeah, right. Anyway. So let's see. Acreol says, greetings all. Guys, I understand. In the basis of every adventure lies a conflict, which players find themselves in and are trying to solve it. How you build conflict in a very enclosed system, such as in a one-city country. So, well, all right, now there's some interesting things here. From a Western perspective, yes, every situation involves conflict, and the resolution of that conflict is where we find satisfaction as a Western audience. So, for example, Game of Thrones, there was a very long conflict that had been set up, which was the reclamation of the throne by Khaleesi. When she got it, the conflict that then inevitably was going to rise up was so unsatisfactory that it left a lot of people going, well, that was just rushed. That didn't feel right at all. And it didn't. They really were rushing it. So the idea is that, so that's a Western approach. In an Eastern approach, oftentimes there is no conflict. There is, however, obstacle. So the lead character is not on a specific goal. The lead character just wants to get on with their life, but stuff keeps interfering with their existence. So they kind of have to deal with that and then they have to come back again. It's a little bit different from the Western approach where they actively go to deal with stuff, they overcome it, and then they are victorious. The Eastern approach is like, well, yes, today you do that, but tomorrow there's another one. And it's an interesting thing that Marvel is actually taking, is Marvel movie makers are taking into account, because the Chinese audience is massive for Marvel. But because they like these things to continue, that's why we've been getting so many and next stuff. But that's a whole different story. So in order to introduce conflict in a closed system, someone will always want something that somebody else has got. That is inevitable. And the most amusing thing to watch is I was in a very small company in Japan for that's what got me over there originally. There was myself, my boss, and one coworker. And yet, even in the three of us, there was a huge amount of politics going on. And it was in all different directions. So the basis of conflict is a triangle, usually. And what that means is that you have the protagonist, you have the hero, you have the antagonist, which is the opposition force or person, and then you have the object. And that forms a triangle. It forms a very neat little triangle. So when you have the hero, they want the object, but they can't get the object because the object is actually with the antagonist. or the antagonist wants the object, but they can't get it because the protagonist has got it. So there's always a relationship that forms. When one disappears, so when the antagonist is defeated, the hero has the object. That is then when the story is over. However, narrative imperative says that a new conflict will arise because someone else will then rise up and take their place. Effectively, in Game of Thrones, this is what happened with Khaleesi. The entire journey was they used to be in power. They lost power, so they wanted to get power back. Who had power? Well, that was Cersei, although she didn't have it originally. She got it. So the triangle kept moving around. Once Cersei was out of the way, then Jon Snow was going to be the opposition. And that's what we were expecting as the audience, was that Jon Snow was going to fight against Khaleesi in one way or another. But it kind of didn't happen, did it? It really didn't happen. We had 8 seasons of this really lots of conflict, and then just and done, right? Anyway, so the triangle method helps. So when you are trying to establish something as an opposition, identify something that they want or they need, and then add to it. So a tidal wave might be an antagonist, and it just wants to destroy the city and kill everyone. It doesn't want that. It's a force of nature, but that's what it's going to try and do. So it's forcing itself against the protagonist, who can't defeat the tidal wave. It's a force of nature, but they can survive. Survival is their goal. So that triangle then shifts, right? Anyway, so I hope that helps in a little way. Okay, Frederick Schmidt says, have you ever used mental stability in a game other than Call of Cthulhu? I tried, but after a while it lost its magic. I don't even use it in Call of Cthulhu because it becomes problematic to track, and after a while it becomes redundant. So it's a great idea. It's a lovely idea, and it is definitely something that happens to us as humans. We know post-traumatic stress disorder happens. Post-traumatic stress, what is the syndrome? PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, yes, happens to people who have been exposed to horrific things over a period of time. But it sucks, as Brian Tart says. And as a storyteller, you go, okay, well, maybe I want to role play a character, or maybe I want to explore that. But as a party, it's not exactly what I would call material for one to explore in traditional role playing. Sanity is the same problem, is that you see a terrifying monster, you lose some sanity. As the player, you go, okay, well, sure, it kind of acts like hit points, and as I lose them, so I lose them, and there we go. And I can recover them, so I can recover them. So it becomes another little thing to manage. But after a while, you go, well, look, I've slayed an abyssal horror. How many of these things do I need to kill before I either completely lose it and never come back, or I'm just so over it that it just dies? So I find it more burdensome than story-filled or flavor-filled. I also find that a lot of players will just buy into it and they go, okay, well, my character's completely nuts, so I eat the this or I eat the that. It's a MacGuffin in my opinion. I think it's something that we don't necessarily need to add because the options for story that come out of it, I don't see immediately. Prove me wrong. I'd be happy to explore those options, but there we go. There we go. I hear a raid is incoming from Laura Bones. Defend the walls. Grab your helmets. Grab your swords. Grab your shields. Grab your psionics and grab your sanity. I don't see any raid, Laura. I think you got us all excited for nothing. Grab your social distancing masks. Yeah, masks. That's true. Oh, there's the raid. Oh, look at them all coming across. Hello, raid. YouTube really needs to get in on that action, I think. I think YouTube really needs to sort that out. Hello, everybody from World Anvil, worldanvil.com. Congratulations to all of the cartography winners. Your cartography stuff was absolutely out of this world. It was really, 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 really cool. So welcome. So there you are, joining us now and completely erasing all of the questions that I was going to start answering. But that's super cool. We're glad to have you here. Welcome. Okay, so yeah, unfortunately, World Anvil, you got here just in time to hear what you may have already heard on the World Anvil shows over the couple of weeks. You guys are going to be hearing about this forever. I am talking about this thing up here, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there shortly. Now, as we do when we're doing this. So if you've got more questions, please ask them. And if you asked a question previously, you can see what I'm working with. This is what I can see. And by rule of self, so that I don't get left behind, I don't ask the question if it's not on the screen behind me, or just a little bit higher, a little bit high. So there we are. All right. So now I want to show you what I would argue is one of the sexiest character sheets I have ever seen. I'm still debating as to whether it is practical or not, because having built character sheets, I must admit, having built character sheets for a while and templates, there's some spaces that might be a little bit too small. There's some spaces that might be a bit too big. But anyway, so I'm going to show you the sexiest character sheet that I have seen in a long time. Have a look at that. Let me zoom in on some of those features. This is the character sheet. How do I zoom in? Computer, zoom in. It's really, really, really pretty. I mean, it's beautiful. Let's be honest. Thank you, swine. So, little bar stools, a little bag with a chicken in it, because you always need a bag with a chicken in it. Shears, so you can make sure the bag's chicken isn't uncomfortable. These little spear point. I mean, it's really a work of art. The death saves. This is something that I'm kind of looking at, going, well, yeah, it's nice. It is nice. There are some interesting things here. Like I said, I think it's very, very, very pretty. I like the fact that they've swapped stuff around. Why are there sausages and teeth on the sheet, says AK Writer. Well, that's because this character sheet belongs to Bran Colonia. I think that's how you pronounce it. It could be Bran Colonia, but I think Bran Colonia sounds more appropriate. And Bran Colonia is today's sponsor. So Bran Colonia is a spaghetti fantasy role-playing game. Now, spaghetti fantasy, I already see people writing it in chat. It's like spaghetti fantasy, WTF. Spaghetti fantasy is what these guys are offering us from Bran Colonia. Look at this cover. That knight looks like he had a very good night the night before. But look at the horse. The horse looks like it's the one who's in charge, and there's just a human sitting on top of them. So spaghetti western, as Adamel91 is pointing out, a spaghetti western, for those of you who don't know, in the 1950s, the 1960s, Wild West American westerns were a major thing for Hollywood to produce. If you think Marvel's producing a lot of movies, during the 50s and 60s, Wild West westerns, and earlier, but primarily in that time period, that was the heyday. We had John Wayne swaggering around. Well, howdy there, partner. That's a terrible impersonation of John Wayne. We had him running around, and of course we had Clint Eastwood starting to make his name as a very, very prolific Western actor. However, it was cheaper to film most of those Westerns that take place deep in America in Italy using Italian actors. There wasn't a Screen Actors Guild, or there wasn't an Actors Guild, I should say, that the States had, so they could go to Italy and film them there. And then just when they needed American actors and things, they would just fly the actors in. So they were called spaghetti westerns because they were made in Italy. And there you go. Now, spaghetti fantasy is because Bran Colonia attempts to bring those two together. There are no firearms, at least none that I have seen in Bran Colonia, but They have captured the essence of the Wild West, I think, absolutely beautifully. And we're going to be talking about them later on and things. But yes, this is absolutely wonderful. Now, there was a question. Why are there teeth and sausages? Bran Colonia, aside from just being a really cool settings book, they've got a whole bunch of new rules that they've added in, which I think are really, really cool. So I'm just going to scroll through. This is like the primer, if you like. Pizza, daggers, and mandolino. Pizza, daggers, and mandolino. I can't help but go into an Italian accent because my uncle is actually Italian, and so I think he would be quite happy if I were to rip him off in terms of his accent. Beautiful map. Kind of similar. We've seen this before in the real world, but it's lovely. Lots of little wayside points that you can go and explore, and most of the stuff happens up here, which is lovely. But again, a beautiful, beautiful map. Principally, they've added in a few little things. I'm just trying to scroll through them. This is the territorial settings and stuff, but they have added in equipment quality, which is not as terrifying as it thinks. Bran Colonia is based on Italian culture. If I hadn't made that clear, sorry, I should have. But yes, Bran Colonia is Italian culture, without a doubt. The spaghetti western from Italy. So poor equipment has chances of breaking. Poor animals have chances of going lame. It really does feel like a Wild West. They've also increased the duration of rests. A short rest is 8 hours and a long rest is 7 days, folks. 7 days. They've got some money options in here. Marks, sequins, florins, trissils, sesterces, all of that kind of stuff. It's wonderful to add in, and I completely support this project, but I know that won't stick. But this is what's interesting. When you think Wild West, when you think spaghetti westerns and that sort of thing, you think bar fights. How would you run a bar fight as a 5th edition dungeon master? People would end up dead, possibly, but they haven't. Moves and whacks is what they've got, and it's a wonderful system for a bar fight. Look at this illustration, isn't it? It's so... I think, anyway, it's very evocative, which is what I love. I love evocative imagery. Anyway, these rules are absolutely brilliant for how to run a brawl. So they've got rules on how to run brawls. What I do like is that anyone who is unconscious at the end or within 10 feet of the bar where the brawl happened is allowed to be strip searched and all money and things of value taken by the innkeeper to pay for the brawl, because there are props you can use. Bottles, cutlery, plates, dishes, tables, barrels. It's all in there. It's all wonderful. And the number of teeth is how many whacks you can have. So there we are. I think that's a lot of fun. Anyway, then they've got some rules for different types of games and things. And then they have an adventure where you have to go and fight this monster. It's really cool what they've done. It's a very interesting Kickstarter. Like I said, the character sheet is absolutely beautiful. It is reminiscent of the late 80s, early 90s character sheets that we used to get in, I think someone was talking about it. Yeah, Steve Jackson, Ian Livingston, Dave Morris, Jamie Thompson, all those and obviously Joe Dever. This is very reminiscent of that time period, and I think it's beautiful. I think it's really, really, really inspirational. So I really like that. They do have a Kickstarter running. This is the character sheet filled in. They've given us some sample characters here, which is pretty cool. I'm not sure about the red ink. It's very clear, but anyway. And they have got a Kickstarter, which was funded in half an hour. Just saying, funded in half an hour. So that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. You can go and check them out. I will share the link here, now, there, and everywhere, and someone will probably be able to find a better link for it. But anyway, there is the link. They are 100% funded. Their pricing is not bad at all. I don't know how they do it in terms of keeping their costs down. But you get a whole bunch of really cool stuff. There's some GM options where you get GM screens and things. And it's a very, 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 very comprehensive amount of pledges that you can do. And of course, everything that you would hope for. The GM screen has got this lovely imagery on the back. So yes, lots and lots and lots of stuff coming from Bran Colonia, which I think is very, very pretty. They've said they'll send me a book. I hope they do, because if they do, then I will share it with you and give you my full thoughts on that. Okay, so there we are. Game Master's Vault, 7 days is much more realistic for a long rest, in my humble opinion. Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, firstly, hello. Great to have you in the stream. I would say also, though, 7 days, 7 hours. Is there a huge difference from a role-playing perspective? I mean, that's a big question to ask. I know you might say, well, yes, it's 7 days as opposed to 7 hours. There's a bit of a difference. But in a role-playing perspective, if the players have to rest for 7 days, all you're doing is ticking points off of a calendar. And since a lot of games don't actually keep track of a calendar, does it make a difference between 7 days or 7 hours? I'm just saying. I mean, obviously there's financial stuff and all that sort of thing, but I don't know. I'm not convinced. I think it's lovely from a thematic perspective, and that's important. It really is. Does it need to be canonized? I'm not sure. We'll find out. I would love to play this setting, as a matter of fact. I was a big fan of those westerns. My favorite western of all time was called Two Mules for Sister Sarah, which was a Clint Eastwood amazing film with Shirley MacLaine. But anyway, Two Mules for Sister Sarah. If you are bored and looking for a very fun Wild West film, very low budget, it's quite a lot of fun. Okay, back to questions. Christian Hernlam says, advice on becoming better with descriptions, imagery, and general role-playing. Any exercises you suggest? Christian Hernlam, we used to do on this show, as a matter of fact, we used to do creative writing, where we would practice exactly what you're talking about. Descriptions, imagery, general role-playing, and the like. And I think the most important thing for you to practice is to practice describing things using alternative senses. We generally say, oh, you see a big green tree, it throws out lots of shade. That's all a visual description. You see a giant green tree that smells of peppermint. Well, now that's a very different type of tree, and all you've done is describe the smell as well as the size. So practice that. Let's see where that goes, and let's see if that will help you. But that's certainly something that you can definitely work on. Let's see, time sensitive. I think the longer rest could be incorporated into tight time frame event. Well, again, Iberheller says, I think the longer rest could be incorporated into tight time frame adventures. It would keep PCs from spamming long rest. Yes, it would. At the same time, though, if they're spamming long rests, is it because they're being damaged too quickly? Is it because they're foolhardy? All that's going to happen, I would imagine, is that they say, okay, well, we'll rest for 7 days. Do you keep track of food? Okay, now a 7-day rest becomes a major issue if they're in the middle of nowhere. 7 days you have to forage, which means that someone is foraging and someone is recovering. I can take that, sure. I've played in many games where you have to forage for food, or you take damage if you don't have enough food to eat whilst out in the middle of the countryside. You have to pay 7 silver pieces instead of 1 silver piece because you're at a tavern. Well, I don't care. So again, this is what I'm saying, is that whenever we add in a rule, we need to make sure that the rule makes sense, or at least that it is going to be of use in the game, rather than, like we were talking earlier, the sanity check. It's not useful if it's not going to actually enhance the storytelling. So I don't know. I mean, it's great to have these questions. It really is great to have these questions. Desmond says, since we can free goblins, where are they being locked up? This is a riddle that's going to take a couple months to resolve, Desmond, so stick with it. You'll figure it out. Maybe. Stanch Skate. Are you American, Stanch Skate? Or Staunch Kate, if you're not American? Have you ever played Rifts? Wasn't there an MMO called Rifts? I thought there was an MMO that briefly came out, or that came out called Rifts. I think I played that briefly, but I haven't played the actual RPG system Rifts. I have not. Let's see. Next question. I see Game Master's Vault is saying it would make a huge difference. Rest and when PCs can take it are the only major thing that GMs can control after the game starts. How much can happen in relation to the villain plot while the PCs have to rest for a week, and how will that factor into the PC's decisions? Well, yes, you are right. I do feel that the PCs, though, will it do what we as GMs hope it would do, which would make the PCs a bit more cautious? Or will it simply frustrate the PCs that they're trying to have fun killing stuff and now they have to go and rest for 7 days, which they feel is unfair? So if the PCs go, whoa, we have to relax, we have to recover for 7 days. Okay, let's think about this. I mean, I have had few tables where I have had players go, we're not rushing into this combat. We're going to think. We're going to plan. We're going to come up with solutions. I've had one game in the last 3 years where I've had that, where the players have really tried to be real characters rather than heroes. And in that one game, it was the toughest game of my life as a GM, let me tell you, because the character was always prepared, doing very, very, very smart things. It was a very fine line between meta and character knowledge, but he was playing an intelligent character, so it was okay. So, again, I think, yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. It's a thing. AK Writer says, what are the must-have qualities you seek in a player? What's the cream on the pie? And what can one as a GM expect of their players? So, AK Writer, it's a very good question. What do you expect from a player? I think the perfect player, is somebody who is dedicated to their character, but who is also happy to follow the story. Somebody who is not terrible with the rules, somebody who's prepared, someone who has planned, someone who advances their fellow player characters and fellow players at the table, somebody who is aware of the game as a game, but is also aware of the story as the character. So, as an example, the player going, well, this particular party wants to just charge in and kill stuff, so I'm going to support them and do that. Or this party wants to think and plan, I will now think and plan. So the perfect player is an adaptable player based on that. But it's also about that player having fun. So, yeah, I think it's tricky. And I mean, I've had players who are really good actors, and you go, oh, this is such a good role player. But they suck when it comes to teamwork because they're so busy being a role player that they are on center stage. On the other hand, I've had players who do not role play at all, but they're very tactical, and you know, so it is about finding the right sort of mix. But I don't know. That's the long and short of it from my perspective. James Tension says, world building tips off the top of your head, where to start, most important things, etc., etc. Most important things for world building, and I can honestly answer this. I've been working with World Anvil, as a matter of fact, on sort of how to make a where to start thing. And it is difficult because everyone starts in a different place. But I would say in terms of world building, where to start with a map. Don't worry if you're not very good at it. It doesn't matter. You can literally just draw a map on a piece of paper and you've already got your world and it will start to suggest stuff to you. So I would start with a map and I would start with a purpose. I am making this world because... And in some instances, it could quite literally be, I am making this world because I'm bored and I want to make a world and see what goes into it. That's a perfectly valid excuse. You will never waste that world. Now, last year, I spent a lot of episodes making a campaign based in the world with the kingdom of Etherios. And I made a lot of stuff for that world, not as much as I would like. And I said, okay, well, I'll draw some maps and that sort of thing. But I have the maps and I have some of the world. And once the campaign was done, there was no option really for me to go back to it, except that now, 6 or 7 months later, I've got a game and, oh, I can pull in that world and I can go back to it and carry on working on it. So I would always say you need to have a map and your intention. And once your intention is achieved, stop. That would be my suggestion. That would be my suggestion. How are we doing for time? We're okay. We're gonna talk about the Masterclass in a little bit. We will talk about that, but there's still some questions that I have as yet to answer. If you are asking a question, please remember to put the word question in caps in front of your question so I know to answer it. Alt the Minions says, what aspects of the upcoming World Builders Masterclass What aspects of the upcoming World Builders Masterclass might an aspiring novelist find helpful? I'm not a GM. Okay, all right. I will answer the question. All right, so firstly, what the hell am I talking about in terms of Masterclass? I am talking about this. I will share the link for you in chat. Okay, so here we go. Alright. Now, the masterclass for Game Masters, Alt the Minions, it is free to attend. There is no maximum number. So if 1,000 or 10,000 people sign up and come and watch and participate, that's brilliant. If 50 people sign up, that's brilliant. If 5 people sign up, what an amazing 2 days they are going to have, because they will have myself, they will have World Anvil, they will have Dungeon Fog, and for parts of it they will have Kaora at their fingertips to ask questions on world building, campaign and adventure creation, and map making to their heart's content. We're still finalizing in terms of the actual running order, and by that I mean I am responsible for creating the program for the 2 days that it's going to run on. It will run on Saturday and on Sunday, the 30th and 31st of May, that's at the end of this month basically, for a period of about 8 hours each day, and depending on where you are in the world, it will run at different times. And it will be on every YouTube and Twitch channel that there is between World Anvil, Dungeon Fog, and myself, as we're sharing it with everyone. So there we are. Now, in terms of what will you get out of it? So day one is really where we take you through the fundamentals in a holistic way. So if you've been watching my videos on the YouTube channel, How to Be a Great GM, I give you 10-minute bite sizes now. I used to give you longer bite sizes, but now it's 10-minute bite sizes. But what I have noticed, and there's no way to resolve it without doing a masterclass, is that I give lots of things and expect everybody to link them together. And I often see in questions people saying, yeah, but what about this? What about this? I'm like, yes, but that links with... Anyway. So for the first day, it's about, okay, let's talk about an adventure creation process from start all the way to finish, using all of the different techniques at our fingertips. So as a novelist, what you will find is in my masterclass, you will find how to tell a good story. And that does not change whether you are writing a Hollywood screenplay, a novel, or an adventure for role-playing. Okay, that won't change. That's the fundamentals. The naming might change. So in script writing, we have 3 acts, and we have the turning point, and a moment of climax, or moment of truth, and resolution points, and all that kind of that jazz. In novel writing, I'm sure you will have different terms as well, but the fundamentals are still identical. From the world building perspective, they're going to be showing you how to build a world which you can then use. So again, it's not just a case of, okay, well, here we go, we're going to show you the software. It's a case of we're going to show you how to build a world, or at least start building a world anyway. So it's very, very much a hands-on, you've seen the videos, but now sit with us and go through it. There'll be live questions continuously answered by the panelists. Day 2 is when you get to submit stuff. Now, if we get 5 people and they all submit stuff, all 5 people will have their work critiqued. If we get 1,000 people, well, unfortunately, it's physically impossible to critique all 1,000. However, we will randomly pull out, I have suggested to everybody, between 8 and 12 sort of pieces to discuss, and then look at, okay, so we've got this example, let's enhance it, let's add to it, let's talk about it, what are some strong points, what are some weak points. So even if you're doing it from that perspective, during my workshop, because we've broken up into different stretches, right? So there's World Anvil, there's Dungeon Fog, and there's me. From my perspective, if you gave me something and said, look, this is not an adventure, this is for a book, and this is my adventure line, and these are my points, and et cetera, et cetera, I will look at that and I will ask you questions. I will still say, well, why would someone want to go on this journey? Whether that is a player character or whether that is a reader, it makes no difference. They both have the same objective. The player character's one is more personal because it's the actual player. The reader is more invested because supposedly you're building an emotional investment with that reader. So I hope that answers it. I hope that answers it. So there you are. Now, to some other questions with regards to the masterclass, this is the logo, Circle of World Builders. Circle of World Builders is Dungeon Fog, Great GM, World Anvil, and Kaora. We've come together to do this. So you do need to sign up if you want to submit work for the second day, right? And it is free. This time around, it's free. Next time around, depending on how we structure it and depending on which part is more interesting, then that might change. Because if it's successful, obviously we'll do it again. I mean, it's helpful for you guys. So there was a question yesterday on the live stream. Kaora said that if we got 2,000 people signing up for this, he was going to dye his hair blue. Demetrius from World Anvil said if we got 2,000 signups, he was going to shave his head bald. Everybody looked to me because I was on that same stream, and I will have to think about it. Now, I do like the idea of going blue. I have dyed my hair blue once before. Like I said, it nearly killed me. But I don't know about green screen, and this is all green screen behind me, so we'll have to see. Anyway. But I will not shirk from a challenge. After all, if the others are rising to it, I bend to peer pressure quite easily. But it needs to be something that I think will make sense, and will be of fun for everybody. So there we are. Sign up for it, share it with others if you want them to join. I see some people have said that they have already. Okay, so that's circleofworldbuilders.com. Go check it out. Right. Question. Siriana says, how do you design a one-shot session for a group where you do not know what kind of characters will be participating, such as like an Adventure League style game? Siriana, did you happen to catch my Wizards of the Couch stream earlier on this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are in the world? Twitch.tv/Wizards of the Couch. I was asked by KoboldCon to run an adventure of 2 hours for some random players. I designed said adventure, rather typical kind of journey into the heart of a jungle to find an ancient tomb, get inside the tomb, and do stuff. Only to discover that the two characters that had arrived to play completely broke the entire adventure. And when I say completely, I mean absolutely 180% broke it from what I had planned. We still had a lot of fun and, things happened. But quite literally, the first set of encounters were with giant snakes. And yet one of them was playing a yuan ti. So he could talk to snakes. And so it became a social engagement rather than a combat engagement. The next combat, which was supposed to happen, was with veggie pygmy-like tree-like creatures. And by chance, one of the other players was playing a druid who was basically a tree and so could talk to the plant people. So what was supposed to be a fighting, sort of out-thinking, sneaking type of adventure became very much a... Wow, okay, let's see. Anyway, thankfully, I had built in some other combats that I had wanted to do. I was restricted to what I could do by the fact that this was a live stream, so I couldn't add a lot of stuff on the fly. Anyway, it was interesting. It was very interesting to run. So how do you write a one-shot? Write it short and plan on, if you have more than 2 players, half an hour is going to get taken up for a single combat. A single simple combat is a half-hour block. And a single simple interaction is a half-hour block. Unless your players are not talking to each other, unless their characters are not engaging with each other, it is a half hour, it is a half hour. And that was it. And in a 2-hour game, I was grateful that they broke it because we could move a lot faster, but I also removed a lot of stuff because we needed to move on faster. So half hour, half hour, half hour, half hour. Use the pace of a combat, a social, and you will have a very robust game. Now, I did a video. It's on youtube.com/great how to be a great game master, called the 5 steps. I think it's the 5 steps, or even this week's one called Design Your Best Adventure, or Your Most Awesome Adventure. Both of those have got very simple points on how to do that. Okay. Let's see where we are at. Sveinpruter says, pretty please question. Hello, Sveinpruter. Can you offer a few wise words? Well, it's already gone there. I'm sorry. Can you offer a few words on the difference between a chaotic neutral and a chaotic evil rogue? I need I need coffee for this. Okay, so chaotic neutral, they will do anything that they want to do, okay? But there are certain lines that they won't cross. That's the bottom line. There are certain lines that they will not cross. They will not rape, or they will not torture, or they will not allow children to be sacrificed to dark gods. But it's a very thin line, and it's kind of there. This is in my opinion. Chaotic evil, I think that was a differentiator, wasn't it? Chaotic evil. Yes, chaotic evil has no boundaries and will torture, maim, kill, slay, and destroy to their heart's content. And psychologically, I really don't think there is a difference. Chaotic neutral is, to my mind, the mad scientist who will do unspeakable things to anything or anyone that they don't classify as being equal to themselves. That's why when we use propaganda to try and differentiate or to try and persecute a particular type of people, we try to dehumanize them. So you're not killing a human, you're killing a subhuman. That allows the chaotic neutrals to go in there and slaughter everyone to the last without really caring. Once they realize that these people are on the same level, they will only kill them if they're chaotic evil. I hope that makes a difference, and I hope that that kind of works for you. We often think lawful evil people are people who will use torture and that sort of thing. If the law that they follow says they can, then they will. But if the law says that they can't, they won't break that ever, even though they are evil. Evil is after for themselves. But they will still stick to that. So they're very honorable in a sense, or legalistic in a sense. Let's put it that way. So that's my take. So yes. White Tiger 225 says, ignore my question. Okie dokes. Watcher 2417. I'm joking, White Tiger 225. In my setting, we have a nation that not only allows the worship of any deity, well, I'm sure the Romans were pretty much like that, as long as no sapients are forced into it or killed for it. Well, there we go. I think that's it. But encourages it, and there it goes. And let's come back to it. Any ideas you can pitch for a holiday for this religious nation? To be perfectly frank with you, I think the biggest holiday that they would have is one that we used to have in South Africa, or still have in South Africa, called Heritage Day, which is where you worship or celebrate your heritage, which became contentious when people were trying to celebrate the heritage of other people, and it became considered misappropriation of culture, which is a bizarre idea considering that it was supposed to be about heritage and celebrating different heritages. But anyway, heritage of the gods, the worship of the divine in its totality would be a festival that I think could work for you. Watcher 2417 says, is there a VOD version of the Masterclass? Yes, it will be. So what we will do is the whole thing is going to run over 8 hours, and then we will, over the course of the next couple of weeks, break it up into bite-sized pieces, which you will then be able to find in a playlist called the Circle of Will Builders Masterclass, so that you could then watch that and participate along with that. So there are some fun little things that we've added in throughout the course of the day, which then obviously wouldn't be in those VODs because they would sit there. That would be, you had to be there kind of things. Ranger Green says, a question. So are there any tips to deal with the HP problem that RPGs sometimes have? I'm looking for ideas. What's the HP problem? I'm very oblivious when it comes to role-playing problems, because usually I just change them. If they are a problem for me, I change them. So what is yeah, tell me what you think the HP problem is, or what is the zeitgeist HP problem. Ranger Green, I'll come back to that. Okay, AK Writer says, chaotic neutral, Han Solo when you meet him first in A New Hope. I'm not convinced. Han Solo in A New Hope, when you first meet him, he shot first, right? As if that's our ground rule, he shot first. Would he have shot if it was a child? I'm not sure. I do firmly believe with you, chaotic neutral is absolutely the right ascription to him. And yes, I don't think he would have shot a child, so I don't think he was chaotic evil. Definitely not lawful evil. So I would say yes. Okay, all right. You convinced me. AK Writer, you've convinced me. Or I convinced me on your behalf. But nonetheless, you convinced me. I'm sure if you were here, you would have convinced me. And then you say the Joker, chaotic evil. Yes, I think so. Right, Dragon says, had unexpected visitor. Is there a transcript of the video somewhere? You mean this quiz? This video? This live show? You will be able to catch the VOD on this YouTube channel. It will stay under the live videos for in perpetuity until YouTube collapses, or they finally decide to take me off. But yes, that's where you can find it. Christian Hernlim says, what are your thoughts on alignment? Are they necessary? How do you use them? I had a discussion with my players after a game. Was interesting, but we have different perspectives. Yes. I don't use them because there are so many different ways of interpreting actions, and they fall down the moment you cross the cultural barrier. What's good for one culture is evil for another culture, so then whose culture prevails? There is the argument of the gigantic intergalactic alignment gods, which make sure that even if you think it's right but it's actually wrong, it's wrong, which means that your character who's been raised to think something has been raised incorrectly, but they had no choice in the matter. So when they're doing something that they had no choice in the matter on, or were completely oblivious to the fact that it was evil, they're still being punished for that act. It becomes very, 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 very weak as an argument for including in a game. Unless they are new players, then you certainly can do so. So there we go. I think that's already being... so I see Pseudonym is talking about a culture that emphasizes family values and home life. We'll celebrate that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we're talking about religions. Okay, of course, Han shot first as AK Writer. Yeah, absolutely. Pseudonym says, South Africa was trying to celebrate diversity, so they chose a festival that emphasized and celebrated divergent heritages. Yes, until they realized there were some heritages that they didn't want to allow to be celebrated, but had no actual justification for not allowing to, it gets complicated. Kajetan98, how are RPG system of chaotic neutral and others work? Again, we've been speaking about that a lot in today's session. Obviously, this whole alignment thing has been coming up a lot. So yeah, I think it's a tough one, definitely. I choose not to use it because it's a fun guide for new role players, but that's it. Trey asks, how do you decide the game system for the campaign that you're going to be GMing? I generally don't. Generally, it's my players. So I will say, okay, cool, I want to play a sci-fi game. These are the RPG options. I give them options. Which one would you like? And then I'll say, oh, can't we try this one or can't we try that one? And then I go from there. So with the By Shadows Light RPG, which is going to be coming out at some point, I'm playing that with friends offline, and then I'll be putting those online for you guys to watch and learn from, hopefully, or laugh at or ignore. There, it's a science fiction game. I said, okay, what system do you want to use? There's D20 Modern Future, which I love. There is this system, there's that system, there's the next system. You tell me. Or there's the Tri-Fi system, which is the one that I wrote. And they're like, oh, we want to play the Tri-Fi system. So that's what they've been doing. What it did necessitate in terms of using a different role-playing system was that we were supposed to have one session 0. We've now ended up having 2 session 0s of several hours each, where they're becoming more comfortable with the rules because they're new rules, and they're going, oh, okay, so this is how this works. I need to change my character for this, that, and the next thing. So there you are. All right. AK Writer says, question, silly one though. Okay. I have enlisted in the Circle of World Builders. Can I now call myself a cow and pretend that I've always wanted to be one? You can indeed, with the blessings of the fellow cows in the field, call yourself a cow. So there we go. All right, folks, we've reached the end of today. We really have. And we've kind of reached the end of the questions as well, which is great. Alignment is a really tricky one. It really is. And, you know, it is something that we have to think about. And if it's going to cause strife in your game, don't include it. We really don't need it anymore. It's like keeping track of meals or ammunition. Some people do, some people don't. I liked playing in games where you had to have all of that stuff. It made it really technical, but I think it worked. But I haven't played in one of those games in a very long time because most people go, no, we don't want to have all of that bother. We don't want to have all of that bother. Anyway. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's show. A big shout out once again to Bran Colonia, that spaghetti western style fantasy setting. I'll be talking more about them as the weeks go on. But there we are. Now, for next week, Sunday, I will be here. I might have a guest with me to talk about an update of something that we have spoken about at length before. But I'm not sure, so we'll just have to wait and see on that one. But I will see you all next week. There is no Hello World next week Saturday night, however. I'm taking a break, so we will see each other once again on Sunday, unless you join me on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. GMT, he said, questioning his own sanity. I think it's 6 p.m. GMT, for From the Shadows Born, which is my one-on-one game. And I did have a question for all of you watching, as a matter of fact. There's 82 of you watching, so that means I should get at least 4 answers. Now, I know some of you are going to answer regardless, so that's very kind of you. So let me rephrase. The one-on-one game that I'm running with Brian, it's an interesting situation that one finds themselves in. Do you want me to do a this is what I'm planning kind of retrospective or pre-spective? So before the game I do something, or after the game I do something where I talk about it. I don't know if there's enough. If there's a lot of people who want it, then I would be happy to do it. I see Des Manere and Laura Bones jumping in and immediately saying yes. But would that be something of interest? I have got a lot of games that I'm running or am in at the moment. I'm in on a Monday night. I'm doing a game where I'm just a player. That's the Savage Worlds. There's Wednesday night with the solo one-on-one game. There's Thursday mornings with Michael Kessevan and Janet from World Anvil and Till from Dungeon Fog. That I'm just a player in. I mean, so we could talk about these things if you wanted to, because then certainly we can do that. Okay, lots of people are saying yes. So there we go. Right, I'm glad to hear that. I'll do it post the game so Brian can go to bed, because I think he's awake from 2 to 3 a.m. in the morning. And I must admit, I felt very bad after that last session with Brian. I hope Brian's not in the chat at the moment. But yes, we shall see. I thought it was a very good sport considering what happened, but and I hate to say it, but it does often happen when I'm GMing. Is the players kind of, especially in one-on-one games, it's so easy to do, and you got to be very careful about it. But we'll talk about that and then on Wednesday night when we do a post the game. And thank you all for putting in an answer. I really do appreciate it. So there we go. Sign up for the circleofworldbuilders.com. Go and check out Bran Colonia. Do I have to share that link again? Do I have that link, he asked. Well, there's the Circle of World Builders link. I'll talk about Bran Colonia. It finishes in 7 days. Well, hopefully it won't be finished by the next stream, and we can talk about it then. Anyway, until then, I wish you all the very happiest of gaming. Hugs to you all.